Tim Dillon asked this question.
And I don't know the answer. I'm just literally asking the question. Is this the period of time where people are meant to lose faith in all government? Is that what this time is?
Yes. I think the answer is yes. This is the period where people are meant to lose faith in government. He goes on to ask whether instead this is the moment where governments start restricting speech and bringing things back like conscription. There's a sense that the current situation isn't stable and that it's going to resolve one way or another. Either people will accept more control or they will move away from it. That tension is what defines this moment.
What is of particular interest to me about that moment is that the slaves, on their end, they never desire the seats of the politicians, right? They just want to have their most basic needs met. In most circumstances, they'd happily would serve some sort of structure of governance forever if their basic needs could be met, but it's proven to be a historical impossibility, right?
People are willing to tolerate government as a compromise if it does what it claims to do. Basic competence, some level of protection, something resembling an exchange. Now, even that baseline isn't being met. Even that paper-thin excuse people made for government isn't there.
I traveled to 12 states with Governor Gary Johnson, the Libertarian nominee for president, in 2012 and 2016. I consider myself to be a libertarian. There are enough people frustrated with the two-party system that with the right leadership, a third party might be attractive. Although part of the problem is this ongoing debate.
This is where I think he goes off the track by delving into potential party strategies. Look, the frustration is real. People are tired of the same parties, the same outcomes, the same cycle. Calling it a libertarian moment makes sense in that regard, but redirecting that energy back into voting or into winning votes doesn't make sense. Right now, you've got leadership in the US openly threatening civilian populations in foreign countries, stepping outside the boundaries people expect. And in Canada, you've got a system where a majority can form in a way that doesn't match what voters thought they were choosing. Across the board, people are running into that same realization. You don't vote for outcomes. You hand power to individuals and they act on it. And typically, those individuals will be the most narcissistic people in society who clearly have little to no problem with institutionalized violence. Power exists where there isn't agreement. It only becomes relevant when some people would choose one thing and others would refuse it. In that situation, power is what allows one side to impose an outcome anyways. That's a mechanism for overriding will, for making people comply with decisions they did not choose. It has never and will never be about representation. That's why so much of the current response just loops back into the same place. Trying to expose corruption, trying to punish politicians, trying to find someone better to vote for, trying to reform the system. It all keeps attention fixed on the political layer. It assumes that if you push hard enough in the right direction, you can make it work. What's sitting underneath that is a completely different system that already functions without that kind of enforcement. Real production, real exchange, real prices, real constraints. That's where coordination actually happens. That's what aligns people in practice. The dreams of central planners and generals and presidents are one thing, but what's actually real is supply and demand. And the entire premise of government requires that people ignore that. So it makes sense that Dillon would wonder whether a war economy is the next step. In Canada, you can see how things are trending in that direction. We're living through a real downturn. Everyone feels it. It's what happens when capital is displaced away from productive use through government spending and printing. And of course, their solution is more spending and printing in the form of things like the defense industrial strategy. For the savvy Canadian, the idea becomes positioning yourself to capture government spending, aligning with where the state is directing capital. That becomes the opportunity structure. Whether you're looking for a government job or public funding for your business, capital stops moving based on what people actually need and starts moving based on political incentives. Costs rise, quality drops, and it becomes normal to think the solution is more spending and more control. That's how Carney is able to form a majority out of people who were elected as conservatives. It isn't ideological alignment, it's spending. It's access to capital. It's alignment with where the state is directing resources. And the direction that points in doesn't stay contained. The West may not move on Iran today, but the domestic patterns that lead to war are already there. It's all just different flavors of central planning which will eventually converge. War will happen eventually, as sure as money printing will happen, and for the same reasons. When interventions don't produce the intended result, the response is more intervention. more control, more direction, more enforcement. Over time, that pushes everything towards tighter management because each step creates problems that get handled the same way. Look at the Strait of Hormuz. Governments don't create the trade that moves through it. They position themselves around it. They try to control it. They try to extract it. They can't coordinate production. They interfere with it. They can disrupt trade and distort capital allocation, but they can't replace it. The underlying constraints are still there. No one can dictate the real price of oil. Much like how the only response the state has to foreign tariffs is domestic tariffs, all the US can do in response to an Iranian blockade is an American blockade. When all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And even the ideologies that claim to be alternatives still operate the same way. Socialism doesn't remove the political layer. It depends on it completely. It still requires central control to force outcomes. The language changes, the structure stays the same. Whether it shows up as progressive jobs programs, with spending programs, public ownership crowding out private industry, or protectionism becoming normalized in the form of tariffs, the entry point doesn't matter. It's all the same path. It's the same pattern. Instead of perpetuating the myth that voting can work, there's a different response available in this moment. You can stop treating politics as the place where solutions come from. You stop investing your time and attention into trying to steer it. You give up on voting as the mechanism that's going to fix it because all that does is keep you inside the same loop. Imagine if instead of telling people they were right to be tired of the COVID response and should reject it immediately and outright, you suggested they should try to vote their way out of it. Or imagine saying we should try to reform the war on terror, or the war on drugs, or global finance control. These aren't things that are meant to be reformed, and if you're being honest, neither is the government in general. That doesn't mean pretending you're outside of it completely. In a mixed economy, no one is fully separate from redistribution. If you're Canadian, you're going to be stolen from and you're going to be the recipient of theft. The point isn't purity tests, the point is direction. It's about never reinforcing that political layer and rejecting the political framing entirely. People who are still trying to rope others back into voting are tempting them to quit just before they've crossed the finish line. It's a last invitation to step back into the matrix and believe that this time it can work if they just choose correctly. It's the same mechanism. Telling someone who is frustrated with government to vote harder is like telling a woman to give an abusive man one more chance. It's like telling an alcoholic to treat their hangover with another drink. It's like you're literally Satan trying to tempt Jesus off the cross. What people need more than anything is to give up on the state, and you're preventing that by offering them something worse than a false hope. You're trying to gaslight them into disregarding the truth they've discovered for themselves, that politics is a dead end. At this point, the appropriate response is simple. Any claim that the solution is a different policy or a different leader or a different regime must be rejected outright. You don't engage with it, you don't entertain it, you don't go back to it because the nature of government doesn't change, and entertaining statism is pretending like it does.